If you're still babying fragile supermarket vegetables, you're spending most of your gardening energy on plants that fall apart the second life gets busy. And for a lot of us, life does get busy, or our backs do, or our knees do. Today, I'm walking you through 14 forgotten vegetables you can plant once, then harvest calmly, in little moments, while the garden keeps going in the background. These are the kinds of plants that don't punish you for missing a week. They don't demand perfect soil, and they don't act like your garden is a full-time job. And I'll tell you this up front. One of the greens on this list is basically spinach without the attitude. It doesn't quit when summer shows up. When people hear survival garden, they often imagine pressure. But a real survival garden, at least for normal families, looks more like this. A small patch that keeps giving. A few plants that come back on their own. A handful of greens you can grab on the way back from feeding the chickens. And dinner that doesn't depend on perfect timing, perfect weather, or perfect energy. That's the heart of what we build here at Family Yard Kitchen. Yard to kitchen, simple routines, and plants that support real life instead of competing with it. So as we go, I'm not just naming plants. I'm showing you how each one earns its spot in a low-effort garden. Is it a perennial that returns for years? Is it a self-seeder that makes its own next generation? Is it a late-season producer that fills the quiet months? And most importantly, does it forgive you for being human? We'll start with the greens and spring starters, the plants that keep you fed early and keep you steady through heat. Then we'll move into flavor plants, onions that walk, and roots that don't demand perfect soil. And right near the end, we'll talk about that late season magic. Because if you've ever looked out at your beds in November and felt a little sad, I want to change that feeling for you. One calm truth: growing conditions are shifting. In the US, the USDA hardiness zones are based on the average annual extreme minimum winter temperature, basically how cold it gets at its coldest. And in recent decades, many places have warmed on those coldest nights. Climate Central's analysis found that in a large set of U.S. locations, those coldest temperatures were several degrees warmer in the most recent 30-year period compared to the mid-20th century baseline, and many locations shifted into warmer planting zones. Now, this isn't fear, it's just good planning. Because when you choose sturdy perennials, self-seeders, and adaptable old crops, you're not gambling everything on one perfect season. You're building a garden that can bend a little without breaking. All right, let's start planting the kind of forgotten gold that makes a survival garden feel calmer. Sea kale is not the curly supermarket kale you're used to. This is a different plant, one that grew up on windy, salty coastlines, sand, stones, hard weather. And when you picture that, you realize something comforting. If a vegetable can handle a beach, it can handle a normal backyard. Sea kale is a perennial, meaning you plant it once and it returns from the same root for years. And what makes it special isn't just toughness, it's usefulness. In early spring, it sends up thick, pale shoots you can eat like asparagus. Later, it gives you broad blue-green leaves that cook like a gentle cabbage green. So one plant can cover two roles: spring shoots and steady greens. Give it drainage, give it sun or light shade. Mulch around the base so weeds don't steal your energy, and treat it kindly with a little compost once a year. The only hard part is the beginning. Sea kale can be slow to start from seed, but once it's established, it becomes that quiet friend who doesn't complain when you can't get out there every day. And if you've ever felt guilty because your kale got wormy, bitter, or melted in heat, sea kale is a second chance. Now, if sea kale is the coastal survivor, the next one is the old European resident that settles in and just stays. Good King Henry sounds like a storybook name, but it's actually one of the most practical grandparent vegetables you can plant. It's a perennial leafy green, often compared to spinach, but without the fragile personality. It grows in a clump, you harvest the leaves, it grows more. And it tends to come back year after year once it's settled in. The taste is mild and comforting. Not sharp, not bitter, just the kind of green that disappears into soups, eggs, and stews and makes the meal feel more complete. Here's the part I love for a low-effort survival garden. good King Henry matches the rhythm of older bodies. Instead of one big, exhausting garden day, you do short, repeatable jobs. A 10-minute walk, a few leaves snipped, a little bowl on the counter. Mulch around the clump and the plant does the rest. And if you miss a week, it doesn't sulk, it just keeps growing. If you're realizing I could actually manage a garden like this, go ahead and subscribe, because every week we're building a yard that feeds you without demanding more than you have. Now let's add the one I promised, spinach without the attitude. If you've ever planted true spinach, you know the heartbreak. It looks beautiful, and then the first real warmth hits and it bolts like it's offended you. Perpetual spinach is the calm alternative. It's typically grown like a chard-type leaf producer, cut and come again. You pick outer leaves and the center keeps pushing new growth. And it's known for staying productive through a long season in a wide range of climates. Here's the lazy gardener payoff. You're not constantly re-sowing. You're not chasing perfect timing. You're just harvesting steady leaves, one meal at a time. And for a survival garden, that's a big deal. Because greens aren't just vitamins. They're the difference between we have food and we have meals. If this list is already giving you new ideas, tap the like button. It's a small thing, but it helps this reach other gardeners who need a calmer, lower-effort way to grow food. Now let's move into the heat-friendly greens that keep showing up when lettuce and spinach give up. Orach is what you plant when you're tired of greens that panic in summer. It has a mild spinach-like taste, and it comes in beautiful colors: green, red, even golden. But the real magic is it tolerates heat better than spinach. And here's why it's lazy in the best way. Orach can behave like a self-seeding annual. You let a few plants go to seed once, they drop seed. Next year, seedlings pop up like your garden remembered what to do. Instead of sowing neat little rows every season, you simply learn to recognize the seedlings. You keep the ones you want, you pull the extras. Over time, your garden becomes a place that produces greens on its own, and you're just the gentle manager. And if Orach is the heat-friendly old green, the next one is the tough, wild ancestor that doesn't get dramatic. Sea beet is the wild ancestor of modern beets and Swiss chard. And wild ancestors tend to have one big advantage. They're not bred for pretty. They're bred for survival. Sea beet leaves are thick and glossy. They cook down beautifully, and they handle stress better than a lot of tender salad greens. This is the kind of plant you can tuck along the edge of a bed. Mulch it, water it while it settles, and then let it become a steady green bank. And you'll notice something over time. When you stop begging plants to survive, you start enjoying gardening again. Because a survival garden isn't about doing more, it's about needing less effort to get a real harvest. Now that we've got the steady greens, let's talk about flavor. Because flavor is what makes simple pantry food feel like comfort, without another trip to the store.
Lovage is one of those plants that feels like a quiet secret once you've grown it, because it's basically celery flavor on a perennial plant. Lovage can get tall, 4, 5, even 6 feet when it's happy, so it's not something you tuck in the front like a tiny herb. This is a back-of-the-bed plant, a corner plant, let it stand there like a small green fountain plant. And when you crush a leaf between your fingers, you get this clean, powerful celery smell. Not the watery supermarket celery smell, more like the concentrated version. Here's why that matters for a survival garden, especially a lazy gardener-friendly one. A lot of us buy celery for one reason. We need a little bit for soup, a little bit for stock, a little bit for stuffing. And we end up buying whole bunches to use 1 or 2 stalks. Lovage solves that. You step outside, you snip a few leaves, you drop them into the pot, and you're done. And because the flavor is strong, you often need less than you think. That's actually a gift. Less chopping, less hauling groceries, less waste. Lazy setup, plant it once, water it while it settles in, mulch it, and let it grow. Then harvest like you're taking small sips from a savings account. Now, if lovage is the flavor plant that saves you trips to the store, the next one is the onion that keeps replanting itself while you're doing literally anything else. Walking onions are one of those plants that makes people smile the first time they see it, because it doesn't behave like a normal onion. Instead of making a big flower and dropping seeds, walking onions send up a stalk
And on top of that stalk, they form a cluster of little bulbs, like a tiny onion bouquet. Then those bulbs get heavier, the stalk bends down, the bulbs touch the soil, and they root, making new plants. So over the years, your onions walk across the garden, one gentle bend at a time. For a low-maintenance survival garden, this is gold, because you're not buying onion sets every year. You're not babying trays under lights. You're not trying to time everything perfectly. You plant walking onions once, and then you manage them lightly. And you can harvest them 3 ways. The green tops like chives or scallions, the small bulbs at the base like tiny onions, the top bulbs. Cook them, replant them, share them with a neighbor. It's the kind of plant that keeps you in onion flavor almost year-round in a lot of places, with very little drama. And there's a quiet relief in that, because onion flavor is one of those small things that turns basic food into real meals. If you're building a garden that keeps feeding you even when you're busy or tired, subscribe and stay with us, because this is exactly what we do here, plants that keep going when you can't. Now, this is where I want to connect the garden to something that matters in a family yard, the coop. If you keep backyard chickens or you're thinking about it, here's a calm truth. Chickens can be a huge help in the yard, but only when we set the system up so it works for us. Because chickens love to scratch, and if you let them into an active vegetable bed whenever they want, they can turn your mulch into a dust bath in about 5 minutes. So the goal isn't chickens loose everywhere all the time. The goal is controlled help. Here are 3 simple ways to do that without making your life complicated. First, let chickens do cleanup duty after harvest. When a bed is finished, when you've pulled the last plant and you're not trying to protect seedlings, let the chickens in for a short time. They scratch up old debris, hunt little bugs, and help you reset the space. Then you close it again. Second, use a simple barrier system. Even a lightweight fence panel or a small temporary run can keep chickens near the garden without turning your beds into chaos. Think of it like this. You're not building a prison, you're just drawing a polite boundary. Third, plant tougher edge plants near where chickens roam, plants that can handle a little disturbance and still bounce back. And that's where something like walking onions shines. You can keep a strip along a path edge or just outside the main bed where you harvest easily and the system stays tidy. And this is the deeper survival garden lesson. We're not just growing plants, we're building routines, garden to coop to kitchen, where each part helps the other. Now, let's add another old flavor plant, one the Romans valued because it's useful from top to bottom. Alexander's is one of those plants that feels like a lost kitchen staple. It tastes like a gentle mix of celery and parsley, not harsh, just aromatic and steady. The leaves are useful, the stems can be cooked like a softer celery, the seeds can be dried and used as a spice, and in some traditions, even the roots get used. But here's the lazy gardener reason it belongs in this list. Once it's established, it often self-seeds. That means you're not doing the start over from scratch dance every spring. You're simply learning to recognize the seedlings and keeping the ones you want. And that is a pattern you'll notice across this whole video. The best low-effort garden is the garden that remembers itself. Now, let's talk about the lemony leaf that wakes up food, because flavor isn't always about salt and spice. Sometimes it's about brightness. Patience stock, often grouped with big perennial sorrels, is one of those plants that gives you leaf after leaf after leaf. And the taste is naturally tangy, like a gentle squeeze of lemon built into the plant. This is not the kind of green most people eat as a giant salad bowl. It's the kind of green you use like an ingredient. A handful chopped into a potato dish, a few leaves stirred into a soup, a little brightness in an omelet. And that matters because when you grow a perennial flavor plant like this, you don't need to depend on fresh citrus or vinegar or specialty ingredients to make food taste alive. Lazy setup? Plant it once, mulch it, and harvest from the outside as you walk by. And if it ever gets big and wild, you can cut it back, one standing job, and it regrows. One simple note, sorrel-type greens naturally contain oxalates, the same kind of compound you'll find in common foods like spinach. So use it as a flavoring green, not your main everyday bulk green. And if you've ever had kidney stone issues and you've been told to limit high oxalate foods, just treat it like a special ingredient and keep it occasional. Cooking it and combining meals with calcium foods is one traditional way people have used these greens for a long time. Nothing scary here, just smart, calm use, like any strong ingredient. All right, we've covered steady greens, flavor plants, walking onions, and the garden coop loop. Now we're going underground into roots that don't demand perfect soil and still give you real comfort food when the season gets quiet. Skirret is one of those gentle, old-fashioned roots that almost nobody talks about anymore. And that's a shame, because it solves a very modern problem. Most root crops today are treated like they need perfection. Perfect loose soil, perfect thinning, perfect timing. Skirret isn't like that. Skirret grows as a clump of slender white roots, and the flavor is soft and sweet. Many people describe it like a cross between carrot and parsnip, but smoother and more comforting. Here's why it belongs in a lazy gardener survival patch. You're not forced into the sow, thin, weed, harvest, pull cycle every year. Instead, you plant a clump once. The first year, you mostly let it settle. By the second year, it thickens into a real resident. And when you harvest, you don't have to destroy the whole plant. You can dig carefully, take some roots, and leave part of the clump to keep going. Or replant a few pieces right there. So skirret becomes the kind of crop that waits for you. It's not asking you to remember seed packets every spring. It's asking you to build a relationship, slow and steady. And that's what a real survival garden is. Not a sprint, a system. Now, if skirret is the opposite of fussy carrots, the next root is the one that looks plain but cooks like a quiet luxury. Salsify would never win a beauty contest. It's long, pale, rough-looking. If you saw it in a bin, you might walk right past it. But when you peel it and cook it, it turns into something surprisingly rich. The flavor is mild, slightly sweet, and some people compare it to oysters or artichoke. And the texture, especially in soups and stews, gets soft and smooth, almost creamy. And here's the lazy gardener advantage that most people don't appreciate. Salsify is slow. Commercial growers don't always love that, but for you, slowness can be a gift because it means you can sow it once in spring, give it a little help early, and then let it take its time. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't demand constant feeding. And when late fall shows up, when many beds are empty, you can dig a few roots and turn them into a real meal. In some places, you can even leave roots in the ground and harvest as needed, as long as the soil isn't frozen solid. So instead of everything ending abruptly, your harvest can stretch. And this is where I want to pause on something important, because lazy gardening isn't really about being lazy. For a lot of us, it's about respecting our bodies. Here's something you don't hear enough in gardening advice. Most gardening tips are written for young backs and endless energy. But many of us don't live there anymore. And the goal isn't to prove anything. The goal is to keep eating well. That's why these perennials and long-term plants are so powerful. They turn gardening into short jobs, not marathons. If getting up and down is the hardest part, I use a simple garden kneeler and seat with tool pockets so harvesting stays comfortable. I'll link the one I recommend in the description. 10 minutes here, a few leaves snipped, a small basket carried, then you go inside, because the garden is still there tomorrow, and these plants are still growing tomorrow. That's not giving up, that's gardening smarter for the season you're in. And quick question, what's your growing zone, and which one of these would help you the most? Drop it in the comments. It helps me tailor the next videos to real climates and real lives. Now, we're going to talk about something that makes a survival garden feel almost magical. The plants that keep building food when the rest of the garden looks finished. Oca is a small Andean tuber, sometimes called the rainbow potato, because the tubers can come in red, yellow, orange, and pink. And when you dig them, it really does feel like finding a bowl of colorful candies under the soil. But the real reason oca belongs in this list isn't just color, it's timing. Oca does a lot of its tuber building late, often as the days shorten, sometimes even after light frosts. So while your regular potatoes might already be harvested, oca is quietly swelling underground in the cool autumn soil. That alone makes it valuable for a survival garden, because it gives you a harvest window that most people don't have. Now, the flavor is interesting. Some varieties can be a bit tart when fresh. cooked, that tartness tends to mellow into a soft potato-like sweetness. And here's a practical tip you can share calmly. If your oca tastes sharp right at harvest, traditional growers often let tubers sit in light for a while to sweeten, so you're not stuck with sour potatoes. The tubers are the main food. Like many crops, the greens can vary in how people use them. So keep your focus on the tubers and treat leaves as occasional, unless you've confirmed your variety and your local guidance. Nothing dramatic, just a good food-first habit. When in doubt, eat what the crop is known for. Now, oca has a close cousin that's late season too, but it's even more of a long-game plant. Uluco is another ancient Andean tuber, often glossy, colorful, and almost jewel-like when you wash it. And when you cook it, it can stay slightly firm and moist, somewhere between a waxy potato and a mild beet, without that strong beet taste. Here's the honest truth. Uluco is slow. It tends to take a long season, and it often doesn't really focus on tuber production until late, when the days shorten. But in a survival garden mindset, that can still be worth it, because you're building a system, not just a Hummer harvest. And once you have tubers, you can save a few each year to replant. You become the keeper of your own planting stock, no constant buying. So Uluco isn't a quick win. It's a long-term companion crop for gardeners with a longer, cooler season, and the patience to let a plant do its quiet work late in the year. And now for the one that looks like an ornamental, but feeds you like an old country staple. Cardoon is related to the globe artichoke, but instead of eating the flower bud, you eat the thick, fleshy leaf stalks. And as a plant, it's striking. Big, silver-gray leaves, tall and sculptural. It can make a garden bed look intentional even when you're keeping things simple. Here's why it fits the lazy gardener survival patch. You plant it in sun, you water it while it settles, you mulch it, and then it mostly handles itself through the season once the roots are down. When you're ready to eat, you cut a few thick stalks near the base, trim the leaves, peel the tough strings, and cook the inside. The flavor is mild, like a gentle artichoke with a nutty note. And because cardoon isn't one of the most common garden vegetables, it often doesn't attract the same constant attention from pests the way more common crops do. So it holds its corner, it gives structure, and it feeds you. Now, let me pull this whole picture together, because the quiet magic of these plants isn't just what they are, it's what they do to your season. Here's what most gardeners feel in November. They look out and see empty beds, brown stems, the end. But with crops like oca and uluco, and with steady perennials in the background, something changes. Your spring crops are long gone, your summer beds are resting, and you're still harvesting. You're pulling colorful tubers from cool soil, you're snipping hardy greens without drama. You're making soup that tastes like comfort, not like we're getting by. That's not just food, that's abundance. That's stability. That's a garden that keeps feeding you while the year gets quieter.
So let's bring it all back to something simple. These aren't rare for rare's sake vegetables. They're steady vegetables. They're the kind you plant once, and then your yard starts helping you back. Not because you worked harder, but because you chose plants that don't fall apart the moment you look away. If you remember nothing else, remember this. A survival garden doesn't need to be big. It needs to be dependable. A few forgiving greens for daily meals, a couple flavor plants that make pantry food taste like comfort, and at least one late-season crop that gives you something real when the beds look empty. Now, if this video helped you, if it gave you a calmer picture of what a survival garden can look like, please tap like. That one click tells YouTube, show this to more gardeners who are tired of high-maintenance crops. And I'd love to hear from you. Comment your growing zone and tell me which one of these 14 you'd try first, because the best follow-up videos come straight from what you're actually dealing with, your summers, your winters, your space, your energy. And if you want a simple guide you can keep close as you build this yard to kitchen system, you might like Backyard Chicken Basics. It's made for families who want steady routines, healthier food, and a garden that keeps going even when life gets busy. And for your next step, don't go hunting around for another random video, just stay with us, because the next one is going to build on this and make it even easier. All right, thanks for spending this time with me. Take it slow,
Plant the stubborn ones and let the garden do more of the work this year.